Every month, my son sent money to my daughter-in-law, supposedly to help her sick sister. One day I went to meet this sister, but the person I found wasn't sick at all. She was someone who knew a truth my daughter-in-law desperately wanted buried.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
I should have trusted my instincts sooner. But when you're a mother, you want to believe the best in your children and the people they choose to love. You want to think that the strange feelings in your gut are just paranoia, just the loneliness talking after your husband has been gone for 5 years. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was at Richard's house, watching my grandson Tommy while he and Amanda went to a parent-teacher conference. Tommy was 7, all energy and questions, and I loved these afternoons with him more than anything. While he was playing in the backyard, I went to get him some juice from the kitchen. That's when I saw Richard's phone on the counter. The screen lit up with a notification. I wasn't snooping. The phone was just there, and the message was right on the screen where anyone could see it. It was from Amanda. Sent the $800 to Carol. She says the treatment is getting harder. Might need more next month. I stood there with the juice box in my hand, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Carol, Amanda's sister, the one who'd been sick for almost 2 years now. Richard had been sending money every single month, always $800, always in a white envelope that he sealed carefully and gave to Amanda to mail. I'd never met Carol, never even spoken to her on the phone. Every time I suggested visiting, Amanda would get this tight smile and say Carol was too weak for visitors, that the treatments left her exhausted. I'd accepted that. What kind of person argues about visiting someone who's fighting for their life? But something about that message bothered me all through dinner that night. The treatment is getting harder. What treatment exactly? Richard had mentioned chemotherapy once, but another time he'd said something about specialized physical therapy. The details were always vague, always changing. I went home that evening and did something I'd never done before. I opened a notebook, one of those composition books with the black and white cover, and I wrote down everything I could remember about Carol's supposed illness. The dates Richard had mentioned, the treatments Amanda had talked about, every little detail. Then I started paying attention, really paying attention. The following week, Richard called me on a Wednesday morning. His voice was heavy with worry. "Mom, Amanda's really stressed. Carol had to be rushed to the ICU last night. Some kind of complication with the treatment." I made the appropriate concerned sounds, promised to pray for Carol, offered to help in any way I could. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee getting cold, staring at nothing. That same evening, I was scrolling through Facebook. I'd learned to use it a couple years ago, mainly to see photos of Tommy. Amanda posted constantly, pictures of their perfect life, their beautiful home, Tommy's achievements. I didn't mind. She was proud of her family. That was normal. But that night, the most recent post made my blood turn to ice. It was Amanda, in Paris. Standing in front of the Eiffel Tower with a glass of champagne, her blonde hair perfect in the French sunlight, wearing a designer dress I recognized from the boutique window downtown. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to escape and breathe. Grateful for this moment." The post was dated that very day, Wednesday, the same day her sister was supposedly rushed to the ICU. I sat there staring at that photo for maybe 20 minutes. My hands were shaking. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was an old photo she was just posting now. Maybe she'd needed to escape for a few hours while someone else stayed with Carol. But deep down, in that place where mothers know things they don't want to know, I understood that something was very wrong. I started keeping my notebook more carefully after that. I wrote down every envelope Richard gave to Amanda. I started taking photos of the receipts he left on his desk, the ones he kept for tax purposes since the medical expenses were so high. $800 on March 1st, $800 on April 1st, $800 on May 1st, like clockwork. I also started watching Amanda's social media more carefully, and what I saw made the cold feeling in my stomach spread to my chest. New designer purses, a weekend trip to Napa Valley, professional photos of her and Richard at some charity gala where her dress probably cost more than my monthly pension, expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford. All of this while her sister was supposedly dying. Maybe she was coping with stress by spending money. Maybe Richard was making more than I thought and could afford all of this plus the medical bills. I tried to convince myself of these things, but the numbers didn't add up. Richard had mentioned needing to put off some repairs on their house. He'd talked about how expensive Tommy's private school was getting, yet Amanda was living like someone without a care in the world. In June, I was at their house again, watching Tommy. Amanda had left her laptop open on the kitchen table. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just moving it aside to wipe down the table after Tommy's snack, but the screen lit up when I touched it and I saw her email was open. There was a message from someone named Carol Henderson. The preview line read, "Amanda, I really think you should tell him. This has gone on too long," and the rest was cut off. I stared at that preview for a long moment, my heart pounding. Then I heard Amanda's car in the driveway, and I quickly moved away from the laptop, my hands trembling as I rinsed Tommy's plate in the sink. Carol Henderson, that was the name. Amanda's sister. The woman my son had been sending $800 to for nearly 2 years, and she was sending emails, not from a hospital bed, not from some treatment center, just regular emails like a healthy person would send. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that email preview. You should tell him. This has gone on too long. Tell him what? Tell Richard what? The next morning, I did something I'm not proud of. I called Richard's office and asked his secretary if I could get Carol Henderson's address. I said I wanted to send her a care package, something to lift her spirits during her treatment. The secretary was sweet, probably thought it was touching that the mother-in-law cared so much. She gave me the address without hesitation. 1247 Maple Street, about 40 minutes away by bus. I wrote it down in my notebook, my hand shaking slightly. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this information. Maybe nothing. Maybe I was just being a paranoid old woman who'd watched too many TV dramas. But then, in early July, something happened that made my decision for me. I was going through some papers at Richard's house, helping him organize his office while he was at work. He'd asked me to help sort through medical receipts for tax filing purposes. As I was organizing them into folders by date, I noticed something odd about one of them. It was a receipt from something called Clearwater Medical Associates for $800. Treatment for Carol Henderson, but the doctor's name listed was Dr. Michael Patterson. I'd seen that name before. Where had I seen it? I went through my notebook, flipping back through pages of notes. There. 2 months ago, Richard had mentioned that Carol's new oncologist was named Dr. Sarah Chen, not Dr. Michael Patterson. I sat there at Richard's desk, holding that receipt, and I felt something click into place in my mind. That feeling you get when you've been working on a puzzle and suddenly see where a piece goes. That evening, I went home and did something I hadn't done in years. I used my computer to search for Dr. Michael Patterson at Clearwater Medical Associates. Nothing came up. No doctor by that name. No medical facility by that name in our state. I tried different variations, different spellings. Nothing. The receipt was fake. Someone had created a fake medical receipt, and the only person who would have access to Richard's office to plant it there was Amanda. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark of my living room for a long time. The streetlight outside cast shadows through my curtains, and I watched them move slightly in the breeze. My husband's photo sat on the mantel across from me, his smile frozen in time, taken 2 months before the cancer diagnosis that would take him from me. He'd always been better at reading people than I was. He would have seen through this situation months ago, maybe years ago. I picked up my notebook and opened it to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, 1247 Maple Street. Below that, I wrote, Visit Carol Henderson. I didn't know what I would find. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for everything. Maybe I was about to make a fool of myself, showing up at a sick woman's house with accusations and suspicions. But I had to know. I had to see Carol Henderson with my own eyes, because my son was working himself to exhaustion, sending $800 every single month to help someone who might not exist, or might not be sick at all. And if Amanda was lying about this, what else was she lying about? The receipt with the fake doctor's name sat on my coffee table, evidence of something I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I would take 3 buses to 1247 Maple Street. I would bake a pie tonight, something to bring with me as an excuse. Lemon meringue. Everyone likes lemon meringue pie. Tomorrow I would meet Carol Henderson. And tomorrow I would find out the truth. I just had no idea how much that truth would change everything. The lemon meringue pie sat on my lap during the entire bus ride, wrapped carefully in aluminum foil. I'd been awake since 4 in the morning baking it, my hands moving through the familiar motions while my mind raced with possibilities. What would I say when Carol answered the door? How sick would she look? Would she even be able to come to the door? Or would a nurse answer? The first bus came at 7:30. Then I transferred to another at 8:15. The third bus didn't run often, only once an hour. So I sat on a bench at the transit stop for 40 minutes, watching the morning commuters rush past with their coffee cups and briefcases. Nobody looked at the old woman with a pie on her lap. I was invisible, the way older people often are in this world. 12:47. Maple Street turned out to be in a neighborhood much nicer than I'd expected. The houses were well maintained, with manicured lawns and two-car garages. This wasn't the kind of place where someone drowning in medical bills would live. But maybe Carol had bought the house before she got sick. Maybe she had good insurance. I was trying to give her every benefit of the doubt. The house itself was a pale yellow colonial with white shutters. Flowers bloomed in neat beds along the front walkway. Roses, hydrangeas, and something purple I didn't recognize. Someone was taking very good care of this garden. I stood at the end of the driveway for a full minute, holding my pie, trying to gather courage. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. What was I doing here? What if I was wrong about everything? What if Carol really was sick and I was about to barge in on a dying woman with my suspicions and accusations? But the fake receipt, the email preview, Amanda in Paris while Carol was supposedly in the ICU. I held on to these facts like a lifeline and started walking up the driveway. That's when I heard it, singing. A woman's voice, light and happy, coming from the side yard. I followed the sound and stopped dead in my tracks. There was a woman in the garden, wearing expensive-looking yoga pants and a silk blouse, the kind Amanda wore. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was watering the rose bushes with a green hose, humming along to music I could hear faintly from earbuds. She looked about 40, healthy and glowing, with the kind of tan you get from regular time outdoors, not from lying in a hospital bed. As I stood there frozen, she turned and saw me. She pulled out one earbud, smiling politely. The kind of smile you give to strangers in your yard who might be lost. "Can I help you?" Her voice was friendly, curious but not alarmed. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. This woman was not sick. She was the picture of health and contentment, standing in her beautiful garden on a beautiful morning, without a care in the world. "Are you Carol Henderson?" I finally managed to say. "Yes, that's me." She turned off the hose and walked closer, and that's when I saw it. The blouse she was wearing. I'd seen it before in one of Amanda's Instagram photos from 2 weeks ago. Not the same style. The exact same blouse. I recognized the distinctive pattern, little gold birds on cream silk. The world tilted slightly. I gripped the pie plate harder. "I'm Barbara Morrison," I said. "Richard's mother. Richard Morrison. He's married to Amanda." I watched her face carefully, looking for recognition, for guilt, for something. What I saw was confusion followed by what looked like genuine surprise, and then something else, something that looked like panic. "Oh," she said. The single word came out strained. "Oh, you're Barbara. I brought you a pie." It was a stupid thing to say, but my brain wasn't working properly. "Lemon meringue. I wanted to see how you were doing. Richard told me you've been so sick." Carol's face went through several expressions in quick succession. Confusion, understanding, fear, and then resignation. She glanced at the house, then back at me, then at the pie in my hands as if it might contain answers. "You should come inside," she said quietly. "We need to talk." My legs were shaking as I followed her through a side door into a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, fresh flowers in a crystal vase on the island. The morning sun streamed through large windows, making everything glow. Carol gestured to a chair at the kitchen table, and I sat, still holding the pie. She took it from my hands gently and set it on the counter, then stood with her back to me for a moment, her hands braced on the counter edge. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked without turning around. "I'd like the truth," I said. My voice came out stronger than I felt. She turned to face me then, and I could see tears in her eyes. "How much did Amanda tell you about me?" "That you're her sister, that you've been sick for almost 2 years, that Richard has been sending you $800 every month to help with medical treatments." Carol closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was something like relief mixed with sadness in her expression. "I'm not her sister," she said. "I'm her cousin, and I haven't been sick a day in my life. Well, except for a bad cold last winter, but nothing serious." The words hit me like physical blows. I'd expected lies, maybe some elaborate explanation, but this flat, simple confession knocked the air out of my lungs. "Then why?" I whispered. "Why has my son been sending you money for 2 years? Carol moved to the table and sat down across from me. She looked older suddenly, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical illness. "He hasn't been sending me money," she said carefully. "I've never received a single dollar from Richard, but I know where the money goes. And I know why Amanda lied." She stood up and walked to a drawer in the kitchen, pulling out an envelope. From it, she took a photograph and placed it on the table between us. The photo showed a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair and striking green eyes. She was smiling at the camera, wearing a hospital gown but looking healthy, holding what appeared to be a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. "Who is this?" I asked, though something in my chest was already tightening with knowledge I didn't want to have. "That's Amanda," Carol said softly. 20 years ago. And that baby is her daughter." I stared at the photo, unable to process what she was telling me. Amanda had a daughter? But Amanda and Richard didn't have children besides Tommy, and he was only 7. Carol must have seen the confusion on my face because she continued, her voice gentle but firm. "Amanda got pregnant when she was 19. The father was her boyfriend at the time, some guy who took off the minute she told him. Her parents were furious. They gave her an ultimatum. Give the baby up for adoption, or they'd cut her off completely. So she did. She gave her daughter up for adoption to a family in Oregon. My hands were shaking now. I folded them in my lap and forced myself to breathe steadily, to listen. Amanda moved away after that, changed her life completely, went to college, got a good job, met Richard. She never told him about the baby because she was ashamed, because she thought he'd judge her for it, because she wanted to be perfect for him. But what does this have to do with the money? I asked. What does this have to do with you pretending to be sick? Carol pulled out another photo. This one was more recent, showed the same young woman but older now, 20. She was in a hospital bed, thinner than in the first photo, wearing a bandana over what I realized was probably a bald head, but her eyes were the same, green, intense, unmistakable. 2 years ago, Amanda was volunteering at a shelter for young mothers. She does that sometimes, trying to give back, trying to make peace with her past, I guess, and she met this girl. They talked for weeks before Amanda realized who she was. The girl had her adoption papers, was trying to find her birth mother. I stared at the photo of the girl in the hospital bed. This is Amanda's daughter. Her name is Chloe, Carol said. Chloe Martinez. That's the name her adoptive parents gave her. And yes, she's Amanda's biological daughter. The daughter Amanda gave away 20 years ago. The resemblance, I whispered, looking closer at the photo. And then I saw it. The shape of the eyes, the curve of the jaw. But there was something else too, something that made my heart stop. She has Richard's smile. Carol looked at me sharply. What? I pointed at the photo with a shaking finger. The way she smiles. Richard smiles exactly like that. That little crooked thing on the left side. I looked up at Carol, my mind spinning. But that's impossible. This girl can't be Richard's daughter if she was born when Amanda was 19, before they even met. She's not Richard's daughter, Carol confirmed. But Barbara, look at her eyes. Really look at them. I picked up the photo and held it closer. Green eyes, intense and somehow familiar. And then it hit me like a truck. Those eyes. I'd seen them before, every single day for 38 years. She has my husband's eyes, I whispered. She has James's eyes. Carol nodded slowly. When I first met Chloe, I noticed it too. The resemblance to your family. Amanda sees it every time she looks at her. That's part of why this has been so hard for her. I couldn't speak. I sat there holding a photo of a girl I'd never met. A girl who had my late husband's eyes and my son's smile, even though she wasn't related to either of them by blood. It was just genetics being strange, pulling features from somewhere in Amanda's family line that happened to mirror my own. Where is she now? I managed to ask. Carol took the photo from my trembling hands and placed it carefully back in the envelope. She's at City General Hospital. She has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She's been in treatment for 18 months now. The treatment is expensive, even with insurance. The adoptive parents did their best, but they're not wealthy people. When Amanda found out she was sick, she couldn't walk away. She's been paying for Chloe's treatments. Every month, $800 goes to the hospital fund in Chloe's name. But why lie? My voice cracked. Why make up this whole story about you being sick? Why not just tell Richard the truth? Carol's eyes filled with tears again. Because she's terrified, Barbara. She's terrified that if Richard knows she gave up a baby, that she lied about her past, that she's been lying for 2 years about where the money goes, he'll leave her. She thinks he'll see her as a bad person, as a liar, as someone who abandoned her own child. But she's helping that child now, I said. She's trying to save her life. I know. But Amanda can't see past her own shame and fear. She created this elaborate lie because she couldn't bear to tell the truth. And now the lie has gotten so big that she doesn't know how to get out of it. I sat back in the chair, my whole body feeling heavy. On Carol's table was a photo of Amanda and Carol together, both smiling, recent enough that I could see it was taken in this very kitchen. They weren't sisters, they were cousins, and they were close enough that Carol had agreed to be part of this deception. "Why did you go along with it?" I asked. "Why did you let Amanda use you like this?" Carol wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Because Chloe is my blood too. She's my cousin's daughter. And because I understand what it's like to make mistakes you can't take back. I thought if I helped Amanda keep the secret, maybe she'd eventually find the courage to tell Richard herself. But it's been 2 years now, and she's only gotten deeper into the lie." I thought about the fake receipt, about Amanda in Paris while supposedly sitting in a hospital with her sister, about all the elaborate stories and excuses. And under all of that, there was a sick girl, a girl who needed help, a girl who Amanda was trying to save even while drowning in her own web of lies. "I need to meet her," I said suddenly. "Chloe, I need to see her." Carol looked surprised. "Why?" I wasn't entirely sure myself, but looking at that photo, seeing those eyes that reminded me of my James, seeing that smile that looked so much like Richard's, I felt a pull I couldn't explain. "Because she's the truth under all these lies," I said, "and because I need to understand what Amanda has been protecting before I decide what to do next." Carol studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "She's there most afternoons. Room 412. But Barbara, please think carefully about what you're going to do with this information. Amanda's not a bad person. She's just a scared person who made some bad choices." I stood up, my legs steadier now. "I'll think about it. But Carol, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "No more lies. No more fake receipts or stories about treatments. If I'm going to figure out how to handle this, I need to know you won't keep feeding the deception." She nodded. "I've been wanting it to end for months now. I've been trying to convince Amanda to tell Richard. That email you saw, that was me telling her this has gone on too long. But she won't listen." I walked to the door, then turned back. "The blouse you're wearing. Amanda has one just like it." Carol looked down at herself and smiled sadly. "Amanda bought me this for my birthday last month. She said she saw it and thought of me. I think she's trying to keep me close, to make sure I don't change my mind about keeping her secret." As I walked down the driveway, past the beautiful roses and hydrangeas, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd learned. Amanda wasn't stealing money for herself. She was saving a life. But she was also lying to my son, day after day, month after month for 2 years. The bus ride home felt longer than the ride there. I sat with my empty pie plate on my lap, staring out the window without seeing anything. My mind kept returning to that photo of Chloe in the hospital bed, to her green eyes and that familiar smile. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open in front of me. On a new page, I wrote, "Chloe Martinez, room 412, City General Hospital." Tomorrow, I would go see her. I would look this girl in the eyes and see for myself what Amanda had been fighting so hard to protect. And then somehow, I would have to decide what to do with a truth that could destroy my son's marriage or set it free. The fake receipt still sat on my coffee table, evidence of Amanda's deception. But now I knew it was evidence of something else too. Evidence of a mother's desperate love for a daughter she'd given away, a daughter she'd found again just in time to lose her all over again. I picked up my phone and stared at Richard's number for a long time. But I didn't call. Not yet. First, I needed to meet Chloe. Then I would know what to do. The truth was out there now, like a living thing between us all. And there was no putting it back. City General Hospital smelled like every hospital I'd ever been in, antiseptic and floor polish, with that underlying scent of illness and fear that no amount of cleaning could erase. I'd spent enough time in places like this watching my James fade away. I knew these hallways, these sounds, the quiet desperation in the faces of people in the waiting areas. Room 412 was on the 4th floor, in the oncology wing. I stood outside the door for several minutes, my hand raised to knock, unable to make myself move. What was I going to say to this girl? "Hi, I'm your birth mother's mother-in-law, and I've come to see if you're real?" The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could hear a television playing softly and someone humming along to a commercial jingle. The sound was young, light, completely at odds with where it was coming from. I knocked gently and pushed the door open a few inches. "Chloe, come in." The voice was friendly, expecting a nurse or doctor probably. I stepped into the room and my breath caught in my throat. The girl in the bed was thin, almost fragile-looking, with a blue bandana wrapped around her head. An IV stand stood beside her bed, tubes running into her arm. But her face was turned toward me with a smile, and those eyes. Those green eyes that looked so much like my James's that for a moment I couldn't speak. "Can I help you?" she asked, her smile fading into confusion. "Are you with the hospital administration?" "Because I already filled out all the financial aid paperwork." "No, I'm not. I stopped, suddenly realizing I had no idea how to explain who I was or why I was here. "My name is Barbara Morrison. I'm a friend of your birth mother's." The change in her expression was immediate. The polite confusion disappeared, replaced by something raw and hungry. She sat up straighter in the bed, wincing slightly at the movement. "You know Amanda." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "She sent you?" "Not exactly." I moved closer to the bed, pulling a chair over. "She doesn't know I'm here, but I know about you. I know about the money she's been sending." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "Is she okay?" "She hasn't been able to visit in 2 weeks. I've been worried something happened." The concern in her voice, the genuine fear for Amanda's well-being, it hit me hard. This wasn't some distant relationship. This girl cared about the woman who'd given her up 20 years ago. "She's fine," I assured her. "Just busy with work and family." "Family." Chloe repeated the word like it hurt. "She talks about her son sometimes. Tommy. He's 7, right? She showed me pictures once." I nodded, studying her face. Up close, the resemblance to Amanda was undeniable. The shape of her nose, the curve of her lips. But there was something else there too. Something in the set of her jaw that reminded me achingly of Richard. "How did you find each other?" I asked. "Amanda said you met at a shelter?" Chloe nodded, adjusting the bandana on her head self-consciously. "I aged out of foster care when I was 18. My adoptive parents, they tried their best, but they died in a car accident when I was 16. After that, I bounced around different homes. When I turned 18, I had nowhere to go, so I ended up at this shelter for young mothers and women in crisis." She looked down at her hands, picking at the hospital blanket. "I wasn't pregnant or anything. I just had nowhere else to go. They let me stay, help with the younger girls, the ones with babies. That's where I met Amanda. She was volunteering, teaching budgeting classes or something. We talked a lot. She was kind to me in a way most people weren't." "When did you realize she was your birth mother?" "I didn't. Not at first." Chloe smiled, but it was sad. "I'd been searching for her for years, had my adoption papers, knew her name and birthday, but she'd moved, changed her life completely. I couldn't find her. Then one day at the shelter, I was filling out some paperwork, and I had my adoption folder with me. Amanda saw it, saw the name on the documents. She went completely white. Chloe's hand moved to touch the IV in her arm, a nervous gesture. She asked to see the papers. When she realized it was me, that I was her daughter, she just started crying. Right there in the middle of the shelter office. She kept saying she was sorry over and over. I didn't understand at first why she was apologizing. "What did you do?" I hugged her. Chloe's voice broke slightly. I'd spent so long looking for her, wondering why she gave me up, if she ever thought about me. And there she was, crying and apologizing, and all I wanted was to tell her it was okay, that I understood. I felt my own eyes burning with tears. "That must have been overwhelming for both of you." It was. We started meeting for coffee, just the two of us. She told me about her life, her husband, her son. She told me about how young she was when she had me, how scared, how her parents gave her no choice. I could see how much guilt she carried. Chloe looked directly at me then, and I saw not just James's eyes but something else, a maturity, a depth of understanding that came from suffering. Then I got sick, started feeling tired all the time, bruising easily. By the time they diagnosed the leukemia, I was already pretty bad. And Amanda, she just stepped up, started helping with bills, with treatment costs. She's been there for every major appointment. "But she hasn't told her husband about you," I said gently. Chloe's face crumpled. "I know, and I hate that. I hate being a secret. I hate that she's lying to him, spending money he thinks is going somewhere else. But she's so scared, Barbara. She's terrified he'll leave her if he knows the truth." "Why would he leave her for having a child when she was young?" "It's not just about having me. It's about lying. About pretending to be someone she's not." Chloe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "She thinks if he knows she gave up a baby, that she hid this huge part of her past, he'll see her differently. He'll think she's a bad person. I thought about my son, about the man he'd become. Richard was many things, but judgmental wasn't one of them. He'd been raised to understand that people made mistakes, that life was complicated. Have you asked her to tell him? I asked, every time I see her. But she just shakes her head and says it's not the right time. There's always a reason. Tommy's struggling in school, or Richard has a big project at work, or her mother-in-law is coming to visit. Chloe smiled sadly. That's you, isn't it? The mother-in-law? Yes, I'm Richard's mother. Chloe studied my face carefully. Does he know you're here? No one knows I'm here, except Carol, and I assume she's told you I came to see her yesterday. She called me last night, warned me you might show up, said you found out about the money. Chloe's eyes searched mine. What are you going to do? Are you going to tell Richard? It was the question I'd been asking myself since leaving Carol's house. What was I going to do with this information? On one hand, my son was being lied to daily by the woman he trusted most. On the other hand, that woman was trying to save a life, trying to right a wrong from her past. I don't know yet, I admitted. I came here because I needed to see you, to understand what Amanda has been protecting. But Chloe, you have to understand. Richard deserves to know the truth. He's a good man. He would want to help you. I know he would. Amanda talks about him all the time. How kind he is. How generous. But she's convinced that kindness has limits. That if he knew about me, about her lies, it would break something between them that can't be fixed. I reached out and took Chloe's hand. Her skin was cool, papery thin. How long have you been in treatment? 18 months. I'm doing okay, considering. The treatment is working, slowly. Doctors think I have a good chance if we can keep up with it. She squeezed my hand weakly. That's only because of Amanda. Without her help, I wouldn't be able to afford the medications, the hospital stays. My insurance covers some, but not nearly enough. What about your adoptive family? Carol said they passed away, but surely there's someone. They didn't have much family, and what little they had wanted nothing to do with me after they died. I think they blamed me somehow, like I was bad luck. Chloe's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could hear the old hurt underneath. I was alone until Amanda found me. Or I found her. However you want to look at it. We sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands. I looked at this girl, this young woman who'd been through so much. Foster care, losing her adoptive parents, cancer, all before turning 21. And through it all, she was worried about making things easier for Amanda, for not causing trouble. You're protecting her, I said suddenly, just like she's trying to protect her marriage. You're both protecting each other and lying to everyone else in the process. Chloe looked down. I guess we are. But what else can we do? If Amanda tells Richard now, after 2 years of lying, he might leave her. If she doesn't tell him, she has to keep living with the guilt. There's no good choice. There's always a good choice, I said firmly. It's called the truth. It might be painful, but it's better than building a life on lies. Easy to say when it's not your marriage at risk. She was right about that. It wasn't my marriage, but it was my son's life, my grandson's stability, my family's foundation, and all of it was built on sand right now, ready to collapse the moment the truth came out. Chloe, can I ask you something? Sure. If you could tell Richard yourself, what would you say to him? She thought about it for a long moment, her eyes distant. I'd tell him that his wife is one of the bravest people I know, that she's been carrying this guilt for 20 years, and it's been eating her alive, that she found me again just when I needed her most, and didn't hesitate to help, even though it meant lying to him. I'd tell him that she talks about him and Tommy all the time, that she loves him more than anything. Chloe's voice cracked, and I'd tell him I'm sorry for being the secret that might break his heart. The tears were flowing freely down both our faces now. I pulled a tissue from the box on her bedside table and handed it to her, taking one for myself. You're not the secret that breaks hearts, I said. Lies do that. Secrets do that. But you? You're just a young woman who needed help and found it in an unexpected place. A knock on the door made us both jump. A nurse poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but it's time for your medication, Chloe. I should go, I said, standing up. But before I could step away, Chloe grabbed my hand again. Barbara, please. Before you decide what to do, before you tell Richard anything, please talk to Amanda first. Give her a chance to do the right thing herself. I looked down at her desperate face, at those green eyes that reminded me so much of my late husband, And I nodded. I'll talk to her. But Chloe, I can't promise I'll keep this secret forever. Richard is my son. He deserves to know the truth. I know. Just please, give her a chance. I left the hospital with my head spinning and my heart heavy. The afternoon sun was too bright after the dim hospital room. I stood in the parking lot for several minutes, just breathing, trying to organize my thoughts. Amanda wasn't the villain I'd been expecting. She wasn't stealing money for designer purses or secret vacations. She was desperately trying to save a daughter she'd given up 20 years ago, a daughter who was dying without expensive treatment. But she was also lying to my son every single day. She was taking money he'd worked hard for under false pretenses. She was building their marriage on a foundation that could crumble any moment. I pulled out my phone and stared at it. I could call Richard right now. I could tell him everything I'd learned. I could blow Amanda's carefully constructed world apart with a single phone call. Instead, I texted Amanda, "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my apartment. Come alone." The response came almost immediately. "Is everything okay? Is it about Richard or Tommy?" I typed back, "It's about Carol, and about the truth. Don't make me come find you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I'll be there." I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Tomorrow, I would face Amanda. Tomorrow, I would give her the chance Chloe had asked for. Tomorrow, we would see if Amanda was brave enough to do the right thing. But as I pulled into my driveway and saw my little house, the home I'd shared with James for 40 years, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The truth was coming out, whether Amanda was ready for it or not. And I was about to become the person who forced her hand. I just hoped that when the dust settled, there would still be a family left to put back together. Amanda arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. I watched from my window as she parked her car, checked her makeup in the mirror, took several deep breaths. She sat there for almost 5 minutes before finally getting out. Even from a distance, I could see her hands shaking as she locked the door. I'd made tea, Earl Grey, her favorite, though I wasn't sure why I was bothering with these niceties. Maybe because what I was about to do would hurt her, and some part of me still wanted to be kind even while forcing her hand. The knock on my door was tentative. When I opened it, Amanda stood there looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She'd dressed carefully, I could tell. A simple blue dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked like she was preparing for battle or a funeral. Maybe both. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She walked past me, and I could smell her perfume, the expensive kind she always wore. She sat on my couch without being asked, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. I poured the tea and handed her a cup. She took it, but didn't drink, just held it with both hands as if trying to warm herself despite the summer heat. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Known what, Amanda?" I wanted to hear her say it. About Chloe, about everything. Her voice cracked on the name. I sat down in the armchair across from her, the coffee table between us. On it, I'd placed the fake receipt, the photo Carol had given me of young Amanda with her newborn, and my notebook filled with 2 years of inconsistencies. Amanda's eyes fixed on these items. Her face went pale. "I found the fake receipt about a week ago," I said. "That led me to Carol yesterday, and Carol led me to Chloe. I met her at the hospital yesterday afternoon." Amanda's cup rattled in its saucer. She set it down before she dropped it. "You went to see her?" "I needed to understand what you were protecting, who you were protecting." I leaned forward. "Carol told me everything. About how Chloe is your daughter, not your sister. About the adoption when you were 19. About finding each other at the shelter. About the leukemia." "Please," Amanda whispered. "Please don't tell Richard. I know I should have told him myself. I know this has gone too far, but I can't lose him. I can't lose Tommy. They're everything to me." "Then why have you been lying to them?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Why create this elaborate deception instead of just telling the truth? Amanda's face crumpled and she started crying. Not the delicate tears of someone trying to manipulate, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who'd been holding too much inside for too long. "Because I'm ashamed," she choked out. "Because I gave her away. I gave my baby away because I was scared and weak and I listened to my parents instead of fighting for her. And then I built this whole new life, this perfect life, pretending that part of me didn't exist." She wiped her face with shaking hands. "When I met Richard, I wanted to be different from who I really was. I wanted to be someone who hadn't made terrible mistakes, someone worthy of him. So I lied. I told him I'd had a normal childhood, a normal life. No trauma, no dark secrets. Just a regular girl who happened to fall in love with him. But you weren't just a regular girl, I said. You were a young mother who'd had to make an impossible choice. I was a coward who gave up her baby because it was easier than fighting for her. Amanda's voice was bitter. Do you know what that feels like, Barbara? To live every single day knowing you abandoned your own child? To wonder if she's okay, if she's happy, if she ever thinks about you. I thought about my own life, my own choices. I'd been lucky. I'd had James, had Richard, had a family that stayed together. But I'd known women who hadn't been so fortunate, women who'd made hard choices in hard times. You were 19, I said quietly. Your parents gave you an ultimatum. That's not the same as abandoning her. Isn't it? Amanda looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I could have kept her. I could have figured it out somehow. But I was scared of being poor, scared of disappointing my parents, scared of throwing away my future. So I gave her to strangers and told myself it was for the best. She picked up the photo of herself holding baby Chloe, traced the image with one finger. I thought about her every single day for 20 years. Every birthday, I'd wonder what she looked like, what she was doing. And then I found her, purely by chance, at that shelter. And she was alone, Barbara, completely alone. Her adoptive parents had died. She had no one, and she was sick. So you started helping her. What else could I do? She's my daughter, my baby. And she was dying. Amanda's voice broke again. But I couldn't tell Richard. 2 years of marriage and he had no idea I'd ever been pregnant before. How do you tell your husband something like that? How do you say, oh, by the way, I had a baby I gave away, and now she has cancer and I've been lying to you about where our money goes. You tell him the truth, I said firmly. You sit him down and you explain everything, and you trust that he loves you enough to understand. But what if he doesn't? Amanda's face was desperate. What if he looks at me differently? What if he thinks I'm a bad person, a bad mother? What if he worries I'll do the same thing to Tommy? I stood up and moved to sit beside her on the couch. I took her cold hands in mine. Amanda, you need to listen to me very carefully. Richard is my son. I know him. And I know that what will hurt him isn't that you had a baby when you were 19. What will hurt him is that you've been lying to him for 2 years. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I know that. But every time I think about telling him, I panic. What if this is the thing that breaks us? What if I lose everything? What if you lose everything by keeping the secret? I countered. What happens when he finds out on his own? What happens when someone else tells him? What happens when Chloe gets worse and you can't hide it anymore? Amanda pulled her hands away and stood up, pacing to my window. She stared out at the street for a long moment. Carol's been telling me the same thing for months, that I need to come clean, that it's only going to get harder the longer I wait. She's right. I know she is. Amanda turned to face me. But you don't understand what it's like, Barbara. You and James, you had a perfect marriage. You never had to hide anything from each other. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. Perfect? Amanda, James, and I had our share of problems. There were things we fought about, things we had to work through. Marriage isn't perfect. It's just two imperfect people choosing to work through their imperfections together. But you never lied to him about something this big. No, I didn't. But if I had, I would have hoped he loved me enough to forgive me, and I would have hoped that I loved him enough to give him the chance. I stood up and walked over to her. Amanda, Richard loves you. I can see it every time he looks at you. But that love can't survive on lies. She was crying again, silently this time. What if he leaves me? What if he doesn't? What if telling him the truth actually brings you closer together? I put my hand on her shoulder. You've been carrying this alone for so long. Don't you want to share that burden with someone who loves you? Amanda covered her face with her hands. I'm so tired, Barbara. I'm so tired of lying, of keeping track of what I've said to who, of being terrified every single day that he'll find out. Sometimes I think about just blurting it out, just getting it over with, but then I freeze. Then let me help you, I said. Let's tell him together. You don't have to do this alone. She looked at me, hope and fear warring in her expression. You'd do that? After everything I've done, all the lying, you'd still help me? I'm not doing it for you, I said honestly. I'm doing it for Richard, and for Chloe, and for Tommy, who deserves to grow up in a family built on truth, not secrets. I paused. But yes, Amanda, I'm also doing it for you. Because despite everything, I can see you're not a bad person. You're just a scared person who made some bad choices. She sat back down on the couch, deflating like a balloon. When? The sooner, the better. Every day you wait is another day of lies. Can I have a few days to prepare, to figure out how to say it? I thought about Chloe in that hospital bed, about the fake receipts, about Richard working extra hours to send money he thought was helping Amanda's sister. I thought about how much longer this could go on before it exploded. You have until this weekend, I said firmly. Saturday afternoon, you and Richard will come here, and we'll talk, all three of us. And Amanda, if you don't tell him by then, I will. She nodded, defeated. Saturday, okay? I'll tell him Saturday. No, I corrected. We'll tell him Saturday, together. You're not alone in this anymore. After Amanda left, I sat in my quiet apartment for a long time. I'd given her an ultimatum, forced her hand. But I'd also offered her support, a way through this that didn't require her to face Richard's hurt and anger alone. I pulled out my phone and called Carol. It's done. She's going to tell him this Saturday. How did she take it? About as well as expected. She's terrified, but she knows it has to be done. I paused. Carol, will you call Chloe? Let her know what's happening. She deserves to be prepared. Of course. Barbara, thank you for giving Amanda the push she needed. After we hung up, I looked at the photo of young Amanda with baby Chloe. 20 years ago, a scared teenager had made an impossible choice, and for 20 years, she'd carried that choice like a weight around her neck. In 3 days, that weight would finally be lifted. I just hoped that when it was, there would still be something left of my son's marriage to save. Saturday couldn't come soon enough, and yet I dreaded it with everything in me, because once the truth came out, there was no taking it back. Whatever happened next would reshape our family forever. I picked up James's photo from the mantel. I hope I'm doing the right thing, I whispered to his frozen smile. I hope I'm not about to destroy everything our son has built. But deep down, I knew there was no other choice. The truth always comes out eventually. Better to control how it emerged than to let it explode when we least expected it. Saturday was 3 days away. 3 days for Amanda to find her courage. 3 days for me to figure out how to support my son through what was about to be the hardest conversation of his life. 3 days until everything changed. Saturday morning, I woke up at dawn with my stomach in knots. I'd barely slept, running through different scenarios in my head. How would Richard react? Would he be angry? Devastated? Would he leave Amanda? Or would he find it in himself to forgive? I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where James and I had shared countless breakfasts, where we'd talked through our own problems and disagreements. I wished he was here now. He'd always known what to say, how to make difficult situations feel manageable. At noon, Amanda called. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I can't do this, Barbara. I've been throwing up all morning. I can't breathe. I can't tell him. Yes, you can, I said firmly. And you will. Because the alternative is me telling him without you there, and that would be so much worse. At least this way, it comes from you. At least this way, he can see how much you've been struggling with it. What if he hates me? He won't hate you. He might be angry. He might be hurt. But Richard doesn't hate people. He's not built that way. I softened my voice. Amanda, you're not the first person to make a mistake and be afraid to admit it. You're just human. Richard will understand that. She was quiet for a moment. What time do you want us? 2 o'clock. And Amanda? Don't tell him why you're coming. Just say I invited you both for tea and wanted to talk about something. After we hung up, I spent the next hour preparing. I made sandwiches, knowing no one would eat them but needing something to do with my hands. I brewed a fresh pot of tea. I laid out the photo of Amanda and baby Chloe, the fake receipt, my notebook, evidence of the truth we were about to reveal. At exactly 2 o'clock, I heard Richard's car pull up. Through the window, I watched them both get out. Richard looked relaxed, probably glad for an excuse to visit his mother. Amanda looked like she was walking to her execution. I opened the door before they could knock. Richard leaned in to kiss my cheek. Hey, Mom. What's this about? You sounded mysterious on the phone. Come in, both of you. We need to talk. Something in my tone made Richard's smile fade. He looked at Amanda, who couldn't meet his eyes, then back at me. Is everything okay? Are you sick? I'm fine, but we need to have a conversation, and it's not going to be easy. I gestured to the living room. Please, sit down. They sat on the couch together, but I noticed the space between them. Amanda's hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Richard kept glancing at her, concern growing on his face. I sat in the armchair across from them, took a deep breath, and reached for Amanda's hand. Amanda has something she needs to tell you, Richard. something she should have told you a long time ago. And I'm here to support both of you through it. Richard's face went pale. Are you having an affair? No, Amanda said quickly, her voice breaking. No, nothing like that. I would never. Then what? Richard looked between us, confused and scared. Mom, what's going on? I squeezed Amanda's hand. Tell him. Start from the beginning. Amanda took a shaky breath, and for a moment I thought she might bolt from the room. But then she looked at Richard, really looked at him, and I saw something shift in her expression. Resignation, maybe, or relief that this was finally happening. When I was 19, she began, her voice barely audible. I got pregnant. Richard's face went blank with shock. What? I was in college dating this guy. When I told him I was pregnant, he left, just completely disappeared. My parents found out and they were furious. They gave me an ultimatum. Give the baby up for adoption or they'd cut me off completely. No money for school, no place to live, nothing. Richard was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. You had a baby. A girl. I had a baby girl. Amanda's tears were flowing freely now. I held her once, right after she was born. She had these beautiful green eyes and this perfect little face, and then they took her away and gave her to a family in Oregon. I never saw her again. Until 2 years ago, I said quietly. Richard's head snapped toward me. What? Amanda continued, her words tumbling out now. I was volunteering at a shelter for young mothers. There was this girl there, about 20, and we talked a lot. She was alone, no family, struggling. I felt drawn to her in a way I couldn't explain. And then one day I saw her adoption papers. Richard, it was her. It was my daughter. The sister, Richard said slowly, pieces clicking into place. Carol, the one who's been sick. That's not real, is it? Carol is real, but she's my cousin, not my sister. And she's not sick. She never was. Amanda's voice dropped to a whisper, but my daughter is. Her name is Chloe, and she has leukemia. The money I've been asking you to send every month, it's not for Carol. It's for Chloe. For her treatment. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my son's face cycle through emotions. Shock, confusion, hurt, anger. He stood up abruptly, walked to the window, stood there with his back to us. 2 years, he finally said, his voice tight. For 2 years you've been lying to me. Every single day you looked me in the eye and lied. I know. I'm so sorry, Richard. I wanted to tell you I tried so many times, but I was terrified you'd leave me. That you'd think I was a terrible person for giving her up, for lying to you about my past. So instead, you just kept lying. Richard turned around, and I'd never seen such pain on his face. You created this whole elaborate story. Fake receipts, fake illness, fake sister. You involved Carol in the lies. You let me work extra hours to send money for what I thought was medical treatment for your dying sister. The medical treatment is real, I interjected. Chloe really does have leukemia. The money really has been going to help her. Amanda wasn't stealing it for herself. That's supposed to make it better? Richard's voice rose. She still lied, Mom, about everything. Our entire marriage is built on lies. No, Amanda said, standing up to face him. Our marriage is built on love. I lied about my past, yes. I lied about where the money was going. But I never lied about loving you. I never lied about wanting to build a life with you. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? Richard's voice cracked. If you could lie about something this big, what else have you lied about? Does Tommy even know the truth about anything? Tommy is yours, Richard. Completely yours. And he's the most precious thing in my life besides you. Amanda took a step toward him. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I've broken your trust. But please, please try to understand. I was scared. I made a terrible choice when I was young, and I've spent 20 years ashamed of it. So you compounded it with more terrible choices. Richard looked at me. How long have you known? About a week. I found the fake receipt, tracked down Carol, met Chloe at the hospital. I stood up and moved toward him. And before you ask, I gave Amanda until today to tell you herself. I told her we'd do it together because I didn't want her to face this alone. Why? Richard's eyes were full of hurt. Why would you protect her after what she did? Because she's not just your wife, Richard. She's family. And family means working through the hard things, not running from them. I touched his arm gently. Your father and I had our share of secrets and mistakes. What made our marriage work wasn't perfection. It was forgiveness. Richard pulled away from me and sat back down, his head in his hands. I need to think. I can't process this right now. There's something else you need to know, I said carefully. Something that might help you understand the full picture. He looked up at me, exhausted. What else could there possibly be? I picked up the photo from the coffee table and handed it to him. This is Chloe, your wife's daughter. Richard stared at the photo for a long moment. I watched his face, saw the moment he noticed what I had noticed, what had struck me so forcefully when I first saw her. She has Dad's eyes, he whispered. Yes, the resemblance is remarkable. It's just genetics, just coincidence. But when I met her, I felt like I was looking at family. I sat down beside him. She's alone, Richard. Her adoptive parents died. She has no one except Amanda. And she's dying without treatment that costs more than she can afford. So Mom's been helping her. Richard's voice was flat. Your mom has been saving her, I corrected. Amanda found her daughter just in time to lose her all over again. And yes, she handled it terribly. Yes, she lied. But she did it because she was trying to save a life while protecting the life she'd built with you. Richard looked at Amanda, who was crying silently, not trying to defend herself anymore. Do you love her? He asked. Chloe, do you love her? With everything in me, Amanda whispered. She's my daughter. I gave her away once. I couldn't do it again, not when she needed me. He was quiet for what felt like hours. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. I need to meet her. If we're going to figure this out, if I'm going to understand any of this, I need to meet Chloe. Amanda's head snapped up. You want to meet her? I don't know what I want, Amanda. I'm hurt and angry, and I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore. Richard stood up. But this girl, your daughter, she's sick and alone. And apparently, I've been helping pay for her treatment for 2 years. The least I can do is meet her face to face. She's at City General, I said. Room 412. She knows everything. I told her I was giving Amanda until today to tell you the truth. Richard looked at me for a long moment. You've been busy this week, Mom. Someone had to be. This secret was eating all of you alive. He turned to Amanda. Get your purse. We're going to the hospital. Now. Amanda's voice was small. Now. Because if I go home and think about this too much, I might not come back. So we're going now while I'm still too shocked to make any big decisions. As they headed toward the door, Richard paused and looked back at me. Are you coming? Do you want me to? He thought about it, then nodded. Yeah, I think I do. The drive to City General was silent. I sat in the back seat, watching Richard's hands grip the steering wheel, watching Amanda stare out the window with tears streaming down her face. None of us knew what was about to happen, what Richard would say when he met the girl at the center of all these lies. But as we pulled into the hospital parking lot, I felt something shift. We were moving forward finally. The truth was out, painful and messy, but out. And whatever came next, at least it would be built on honesty instead of deception. Richard turned off the engine and sat for a moment, his hands still on the wheel. When we go in there, I need you both to let me lead. I need to talk to her on my own terms. Understood? We both nodded. Okay then. He opened his door. Let's go meet my wife's daughter. As we walked toward the hospital entrance, I sent up a silent prayer that whatever happened in room 412 would be the beginning of healing instead of the end of everything. Richard knocked on the door of room 412 before either Amanda or I could stop him. From inside, we heard Chloe's voice call out, "Come in." He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Amanda and I followed, staying back near the doorway while Richard approached the bed. Chloe was sitting up, a book in her lap. When she saw who it was, her face went pale. She looked past Richard to Amanda, then to me, understanding immediately what had happened. "You must be Richard," she said quietly, setting the book aside. "And you must be Chloe." Richard stood at the foot of her bed, studying her face. I saw the moment he noticed what I had noticed, what Amanda had been seeing for 2 years. The eyes, the smile, the features that somehow echoed our family even though there was no blood connection. "I'm sorry," Chloe said. "I know Amanda should have told you. I've been telling her that for months. This is my fault." "No," Richard's voice was firm. "You're sick. You're alone. You didn't ask Amanda to lie to me. That was her choice." He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. "Tell me about the leukemia. How bad is it?" Chloe glanced at Amanda, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm in treatment. It's working, slowly. The doctors think if we can keep up with it, I have a good chance of remission. But the treatment is expensive. And Amanda's been helping pay for it." "Yes. Without her, I wouldn't be able to afford the medications, the hospital stays. My insurance covers some, but not nearly enough." Chloe's voice trembled. "I never wanted to come between you two. If I'd known it would cause this much trouble, I would have told her to stop." "And die?" Richard asked bluntly. "Maybe. I don't know. Chloe looked down at her hands. I've been alone most of my life. I'm used to figuring things out on my own. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made my heart clench. My dad died of cancer 6 years ago. I watched him waste away. Watched my mom sit beside his bed day after day. The treatment cost everything we had and it still wasn't enough. He looked at Chloe directly. So no, I'm not going to let you die because my wife was too scared to tell me the truth. Chloe started crying. You don't have to do that. You don't owe me anything. No, I don't. Richard glanced back at Amanda, who was crying silently by the door. But apparently, I've been helping you for 2 years already. Might as well keep going. Except this time, I'll know where my money is actually going. Richard, Amanda whispered, her voice breaking. He held up a hand. I'm not saying I've forgiven you. I'm not saying we're okay. I'm saying that this girl needs help and I'm not going to punish her for your mistakes. He turned back to Chloe. Tell me about the treatment plan. What do the doctors say you need? For the next 20 minutes, Chloe walked him through her medical situation. Richard asked questions, real questions, the kind that showed he was actually trying to understand. I watched Amanda's face as she realized what was happening. Richard wasn't walking away. He was angry, he was hurt, but he was staying. Finally, Richard stood up. I need time to process all of this. I need space from Amanda to figure out how I feel about the lies. But Chloe, I'll be back, and we'll make sure you have what you need for treatment. Thank you, Chloe whispered. As we left the hospital, Richard walked ahead of us, his shoulders tense. In the parking lot, he stopped and turned to Amanda. I'm going to stay at my mom's for a few days. I need time to think without you there trying to explain or apologize. I need to figure out if I can trust you again. I understand, Amanda said, her voice small. Do you? Richard's voice rose slightly. Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just lie about where money was going. You lied about who you are, about your past, about having a daughter. I know, and I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing and start explaining. Why? Why did you think I wouldn't understand? Why did you think I'd leave you over something that happened when you were 19? Amanda wrapped her arms around herself. Because you're good, Richard. You're so good and honest, and I didn't want you to see me as someone who gave her baby away. I didn't want you to think I was the kind of person who could do that, but you did do that. And then you found her again and helped her. That's not someone I'd judge, Amanda. That's someone who made a hard choice and then tried to make it right. Richard's voice broke. If you'd just trusted me enough to tell me the truth, we could have helped Chloe together. Instead, you made me a fool in my own marriage. They stood there in the parking lot, years of unspoken pain hanging between them. Finally, I stepped forward. Richard, come home with me. Amanda, go home and give him space. In a few days, when everyone's had time to process, we'll figure out what comes next. 6 weeks later, I stood in my kitchen with Amanda and Chloe, teaching them my mother's recipe for apple pie. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where time moved slowly and peacefully. Chloe's latest scan had shown the treatment was working. She'd gained weight, had more energy. The bandana she usually wore was gone, replaced by a short crop of new hair growing in. Like this? Chloe asked, trying to crimp the edges of the pie crust. Perfect, I said, watching her work. You're a natural. Amanda smiled, her hands covered in flour. The dark circles under her eyes were finally fading. She and Richard were in counseling, working through the damage her lies had caused. It was slow, painful work, but they were both committed to trying. Richard appeared in the doorway, home from picking up Tommy from soccer practice. Tommy rushed past him into the kitchen. Is the pie ready yet, Grandma? Almost, sweetheart. Why don't you go wash up? As Tommy ran off, Richard came to stand beside Chloe at the counter. How are you feeling today? Good, strong. She smiled at him, and I saw again that resemblance that had struck me so forcefully the first time I'd met her. Not blood, just the strange coincidence of genetics that made her feel like family. Doctor's appointment on Tuesday, Richard reminded her. I'll drive you. You don't have to do that. I know. He squeezed her shoulder briefly, but I want to. Later, after the pie was in the oven and Chloe was resting on the couch, Richard and Amanda stood together in my kitchen. They weren't touching, but they were standing close, the space between them smaller than it had been weeks ago. I'm still angry, Richard said quietly. Some days more than others. Some days I look at you and all I can think about is how easily you lied to me. I know. Amanda's voice was steady. And you have every right to be angry. All I can do is keep being honest now. Keep showing you that I can be trusted again. It's going to take time. I know. Richard looked at me. Thank you, Mom, for forcing this out into the open, for not letting us keep drowning in secrets. You would have figured it out eventually, I said. I just sped up the timeline and introduced us to Chloe. He glanced toward the living room where she was dozing. She's good for us in a weird way. Reminds us what actually matters. 6 months after that, we celebrated Christmas together. All of us. Richard and Amanda and Tommy, Chloe with her full head of hair now, Carol who'd driven in from out of town. We crowded around my small dining table, which barely fit everyone, and shared a meal that was more about family than food. Chloe sat between Richard and Amanda, looking healthier than I'd ever seen her. Her latest scans were clear. The doctors were talking about remission, about her future, about hope. I can't believe this is my life now, she said quietly, looking around the table. A year ago, I was alone in a hospital room thinking I was going to die by myself. You're not alone anymore, Tommy said matter-of-factly. You're part of our family now. And she was. Not in the way any of us had expected, not through the traditional paths of blood and marriage, but through truth and forgiveness, and the simple decision to choose connection over separation. Amanda had started a support group for mothers who'd given children up for adoption. She met with them every week, helping them work through their grief and guilt, showing them it was possible to find peace. Richard had forgiven her, slowly and with setbacks, but genuinely. Their marriage was different now, more honest, more careful, but also stronger in ways it hadn't been before. And I had gained a granddaughter I'd never expected, one who spent Sunday afternoons in my kitchen learning family recipes, who called me when she needed advice, who looked at me with eyes that reminded me of my James. As I looked around my crowded table that Christmas, at this imperfect, complicated, beautiful family we'd become, I thought about the moment I'd found that fake receipt, the moment I'd decided to investigate instead of ignore. The truth had been painful. It had broken things that needed to be broken and forced us all to rebuild from a more honest foundation. But it had also freed us. Freed Amanda from years of guilt and fear. Freed Richard from living in a marriage built on lies. Freed Chloe from isolation and gave her a family when she needed one most. Thank you, Amanda said to me later as we were cleaning up, for not letting me keep running from the truth. Thank you for finally being brave enough to face it, I replied. She smiled, a real smile, the kind I'd rarely seen before all of this. I'm not scared anymore. That's the strangest thing. For 20 years, I was terrified someone would find out. And now everyone knows, and I'm not scared. I'm free. That's what truth does, I thought. It frees you, even when it hurts. As I locked my door that night, after everyone had gone home, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in months. My family was healing. We were broken in some ways, scarred in others, but we were healing together. And somewhere in all of that, I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let people hide in their secrets. Sometimes you have to force the truth into the light, even when it's painful, because that's the only way anyone can truly be free. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.